Time now for the news review segment, where we'll get into a conversation surrounding some of the topical issues dominating the media space. This morning, I'm joined in studio by Elvis Dako. He's the editor of the News Center newspaper and newscenter.com. Good morning, Elvis.
Good morning.
Good to have you. Akosua Mienu is here. She was the NPP's parliamentary candidate for the Adenton constituency in the 2024 general elections. Good morning, Akosua.
Good morning.
Good to have you. Then we have the Honorable Member of Parliament for Afajatu South, Frank Efriye, also here with us. Good morning, Honorable.
Good morning.
First time here.
Absolutely.
Good to have you. Good
Sure.
to have you.
Same
Good
here.
to have you.
Same here.
Right. We have a number of stories to look at, but before that, Akosua has written a love letter to Madam Vice President. Hey, Akosua.
Yes, I did.
Talk to us about that briefly.
Okay, so when the Vice President became the first female to ever assume that position, even though we are on different, on the political divide, we're on the other side, I'm sure most of us felt proud that a female had been able to, you know, attain such a high height. Now, if you take the three arms of government, Chief Justice Tokono, I've said it here before, that her treatment, the media trial, the indignity that she has suffered, the shame brought to herself, her family, anybody associated with her, is almost to strip her of any meaningful connection that people have to her, have with her as far as respect is concerned. Now, when all this was happening, you recall that she asked for a public trial for the process to be made public.
The committee hearings.
The committee hearings to be made public, and she being denied it. And I think, obviously, if I was here that day with him, the conversation was, if indeed you are saying she's done all that she says she's done, at least let us see her defending herself. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that everything happening there after that, there's no information whatsoever. But then we have a female vice president who, although is not the number one, is clearly the number two. And if we take the three arms of government, another female is sitting right on top of it. I think that it would have been fair to hear what she has to say concerning the matter. If in the room she even disagrees, I'm sure whispers would have floated around somewhat that she disagrees to the humiliation and the beating and battering of the image and dignity of Chief Justice Tokono. I do not believe that till date the things as stated in the petition merit the humiliation that she suffered. And it's only fair that we hear from the Vice President to bring her attention to it and to call for some sanity as far as some of these media and public trials are concerned. Beyond the gender issue, it also speaks to how women are often treated. Not enough break through the glass ceiling as it is, but when we see them do, is to lend a helping hand to the other. So
well, thank you. I would have gone around the table on this, but it's not part of our topics. I just decided to chip that in since the author sits here herself, so I just had to have her put a voice to the text that she had written. Anyways, our first story for today happens to do with labor unrest. The Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association is on strike. That strike has taken a critical turn. Okay, we're recording an increase in number of deaths. The Mortuary Workers Association actually spoke to us and told us that the intake of dead bodies now has increased since the nurses embarked on this strike. There has been some engagements, but we haven't seen the end of it. Negotiations, we are not sure where they stand now. I'm going to start with you, Honorable Frank Efriye, on this nurses strike. The minority now is urging government to honor the conditions of service. Government says if we do so, it will throw our budget off gear. Nurses insist that we made you aware of this agreement, which was signed in 2024, but we made you aware of it since 2025 January. So how are you unable to factor this in your budget and implement same?
Well, let me use the opportunities to say
profound gratitude to yourself, and of course ChannelOne, being my maiden appearance over here. It's also important for me to use the opportunity to say good morning to the good people of the Fajr to serve, my co-panelists, and then to seize the opportunity once again to wish our BEC candidates all the best in their examination. We know we count on them. They constitute the human resource base of this country.
Right.
And then we pray that Almighty God guides them through a successful end. I think before I come to the nurses strike, I think it's also important to just say briefly a word about Akosia's letter to the Vice President. We have couched for ourselves a democratic path, which path sometimes could be bitter and sweet. In our jurisprudence, we have all agreed that no matter the ills of democracy, it's still far, far better than military intervention. So if you visit the Constitution, specifically the section that provides for removal of justices of the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice, I think the President is only like a conveyor belt in all this. And failure to act will also amount to constitutional breaches. And so, yes, today we have a female vice president, but can she do anything outside the democratic structure that we have, drawn for ourselves? No, I do not think so. And I wouldn't like to go into memory lane as to who was where, when, what was done. As a nation, we must just ensure that, look, we give her the dignity that she deserves in all these entire processes. The law was in her bosom, and so I know that she knows where and how to defend herself.
Very well.
So back to this very issue, a strike by the Registered Nurses and Midwife Association.
Were you in Parliament when that chaos occurred?
Yes, I was, but I stepped momentarily to my office
so
when the chaos erupted. And so yesterday, funny enough, I was dressing my daughter up, my third born, and then she heard the name Efriye on Joy. Then he said, look, Daddy, your name is being mentioned. I said, no, that's not me.
Right.
Just on the sideline. Okay, so it's unfortunate we are where we are now. Matters of labor are at the heart of this administration's preoccupation. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, per their record, is very concerned about what goes to the labor front, the working conditions of all the laborers of this country. It's extremely important to point that out. Now, let's put this whole thing into perspective. The nurses have signed an agreement with government. It really doesn't matter which regime was in power then, but the government of Ghana. But principally under the former administration. And so when you take over, you inherit pluses and minuses. So I am not ready to make any case as to who really signed, who ought to deliver to these nurses what they were entitled to.
Right.
But we are where we are simply because government of Ghana has reneged on its own pledges to these nurses and midwives. And so there is a stalemate. The nurses have sent a signal and then they have withdrawn their services. Now, in the midst of all this, is there a winner? No. There is absolutely no winner. Government doesn't win in any form of shape. The nurses and midwives themselves, they can never win in any form of shape. At the very least, government is losing most, simply because the lot of revenues that these hospitals generate is going down the drain. Again, precious lives are likely to be lost, if not lost already. A lot of the sick, their conditions will be exacerbated by this strike. Doctors are extremely overwhelmed. And so government is concerned about the current trend, but then we are just torn between the devil and the deep blue sea. On the one hand, you need to make your workers feel okay by giving them what they are entitled to. On the other hand, too, you have an economy that has not been doing well. You inherited an economy that was quite ailing, which government is fixing. And so when you fix the economy, every worker, regardless of the amount and emolument you are entitled to, at least it puts you in a more convenient position. If the economy is working well, the exchange rate, the inflationary trend, everything, prices of food items, consumables, everything, including hospital bills. If the workforce or labor is being paid something minimum or reasonable, within a functioning economy, you realize that there will not be that much pressure. Okay? But then, if government goes out, government's position is that, given where we are now, if we should step out of the physical discipline that we are exercising, that will mean that the economic gains and the foundation we are laying for ourselves is likely to be put in jeopardy.
The argument the nurses make is more of they being taken for a ride, because according to the nurses, they have been engaging since January of 2025. And so you know about this, you don't factor it in the budget, you wait for us to strike, and then you tell us that you are unable to implement same.
No, the reality is that I will not sit here and government hasn't shown any posturing of blaming or putting a blame game on these nurses. Indeed, they are entitled to what they are asking for, signed by the government of Ghana.
Very well.
But then we must also make the point quite strongly that this whole thing was signed under the previous administration. Now, in the month of January 2025, that was when the new regime was taking over. The president was sworn in, members of parliament, we were sworn in. Thereafter, ministers were being, appointed, vetted. The wheel of government was in the process of being set in motion. And again, you realize that until you take over, you don't really appreciate the real state of the coffers. Okay?
You know the chief directors are still there.
The chief directors are there, but these are grand policy issues. You have made pledges on the campaign trail, and then within the fiscal space that you have, you need to fulfill.
Which pledge included better conditions for nurses?
Absolutely, better conditions for nurses and all other workers, including the pledge to fix the economy. Okay? And so it is like you put in which of this one you put first?
A matter of priorities.
Priority. I think that what benefits all of us globally as Ghanaians is to fix the economy first. When we fix the economy, then we come and ask ourselves that how do we reward workforce or labor?
Very well.
And so I am concerned that as at now, the two parties are not sitting. At a certain point, government says, come and let's sit. But the nurses say, no, we are holding on to our gun. Until you fulfill what it is that we are entitled to, we will not return. In this case, look, lives are at stake, as I said already. We need to get the nurses back by appealing to them. And I'm using this platform to appeal passionately to them. Now, regarding what happened in Parliament, I think it's uncalled for, completely uncalled for, because it's a rule, it's a house that is governed by rule. And so if you go to Order 93.1, a member can raise a subject matter of public importance, such as what is happening now with the nurses and midwives. But that is subject to the discretion of the Speaker. Again, any statement so composed will be discussed at the level of leadership and the Speaker. That is conclave. And so not too long ago, you recall that Winneba was heavily under attack by cholera. The minority leader passed through every legitimate laid-down procedural processes, to make a statement on the floor of the House, which attracted contribution from all of us, not only by way of our but then material contribution. And so these laid-down processes ought to be followed.
Very well.
If you don't follow and speaker says, please follow the process and you decide to go otherwise, I think that is a form of gross indiscipline which all of us must guard against going forward.
Very well, very well. Akusia, the minority insists that government must honor the conditions of service. From what you said, is the government in a position to? The government is asking for time. They want to move the implementation date to 2026. Is the government treating these nurses fairly?
First of all, let me just greet your the audience again, watching from home, and a quick rebuttal to his response to my love letter to the Vice President. His response doesn't surprise me, since it's obvious that the goal has been to remove the CJ. What I am saying is that he is basing, as we sit here, he's basing the process on the Constitution. The public humiliation and vilification is not spelled out anywhere in the Constitution. There's a dignified manner in which this can be done. If indeed you feel that she's erred, or as they conveniently postured that a petition was brought to them and subsequently that is what they are following up on, why not? But is the vilification necessary? Is the indignity she suffered necessary? The Constitution doesn't spell that.
Right.
Now back to the question of
the nurses' strike.
The nurses' strike. It's been, I would say that this has been probably the longest strike in recent history of nurses laying down their tools this way. The engagement so far shows the neglect and disrespect the government has for the nurses. When the former government assumed power in 2017, there were conditions spelled out from various institutions that it did not hesitate to implement, because government is a continuum. As far back as May 1st, was 2024, was when the agreement had been done. We all know that there was a faction of them that took the matter to court. We know that as a result of that, it delayed. The case was brought to a finality in January of this year. They are not asking for much. In fact, the government is telling us that it's 2 billion that will be added to government budget.
Right.
2 billion. But government didn't hesitate to increase the budgetary allocation to the Jubilee House to 1.4 billion. Luxury travels, excess presidential staffers, a whole lot that goes into that 1.4 billion. Are we saying that government cannot find the space to help these nurses? As we speak, even on your website, 85 new cases of mpox.
Yeah.
Honorable Efriye sits here. His constituency, if I'm right, has 19 public health institutions, 2 private institutions, has 92 nurses and 20 midwives who have laid down their tools. In the event of an outbreak, even in his constituency, who will be blamed? He will be blamed. What hurts me the most is this whipping up of media personalities, from social media to even on-air radio, TV, lambasting these nurses. That what do you mean by asking for a uniform allowance? So I worked in a bank before I even launched myself into politics. That was private sector. But even them, they see the need to give you an allowance to dress, to look good, to represent the institution that you work for. So these nurses with their meager salaries, probably not one of even the best in the sub-region, are asking for that extra cushion for their welfare, given that as we sit here, the D-levy is even going to kick in and transport fares will go up and nurses can't afford cars. That little bit to let them feel that they are cared for as frontline health staff. People that sacrifice their lives daily, whose stories are not even heard as far as what they go through. We can't bring some respect to the process. We can't show some competence to the effect that the health minister even said that he's going to bring retired nurses if they are going to behave this.
He appealed to retired nurses to volunteer.
No, even to say that is so dismissive of the concerns therein, because even with the retired nurses, I've listened to a few interviews and they spelled out the horrible conditions they suffered and how they exited it without even a decent retirement package. And we all know that one stream of income is not even enough. There are nurses who work but sell stuff on the side or to make ends meet. Honorable here, I'm sure, has other businesses to sustain all the demands that his constituents will place on him. So it's so shameful and embarrassing. And last week when I was here, I pleaded that the nurses go back. You know, it's painful to hear the things being said of them as if they do not matter, but they do matter. As we sit here, last Tuesday, I hear death toll is rising. I hear the death toll is rising. And it's not like we have an epidemic, but it's just the incompetence and the insensitivity of this government. Almost to use them as an example that, oh, we are used to strikes, as the former president said in his first term. Do you remember? Dead goat syndrome. That this we are used to, so do your worst. Really? At the expense of the poor Ghanaian, some of whom will not even have the opportunity to even see any person of authority, just their national health insurance and whatnot, and a good nurse to take care of them. Really? If this is some sort of playbook to deter other organized labor or other workers to desist from striking, I believe it's a very poor example, because if agreements are not met, it is dialogue, it is appealing, it is pleading. It's not being dismissive, it's not being insulting, it's not telling them that. And it's not even frontal, it's almost as if the posture. The health minister even said something about he was even out of town and he doesn't even know why they are doing what they are doing. I was like, what's that got to do with anything? You sat with them. You knew this was coming. When he was in, in opposition, did he not take a trip to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital and wanted to apparently go to the surgical ward because he felt that he had to see for himself what was happening?
When he was a ranking member on the health committee, so
why not?
I mean, he was exercising.
So the same concern he had and the same issues they had back then, not much has changed.
No, the only difference was of the economy. They have changed.
The realities of the economy did not deter them from ballooning the budget at the Jubilee House, 1.4 billion.
We understand the national security has now been taken away from the OGM, the Office of Government Machinery.
When your
nurses
strike, when your nurses lay down their tools for more than a week, it's national security failure. The national security should have sacrificed their resource allocations to give to the nurses.
The national security is engaged in different matters.
The national security should have spelled out the dangers of nurses going out, of nurses striking. So it's a failure on the national security. It is. The president should have been briefed that if these nurses go on strike, these are the repercussions nationwide. I am sure the death toll in his constituency may have gone up because 92 nurses, 20 midwives are not working. Women are going to go into labor. What will these midwives do? They are going to fold their arms and look at them. Is that what we want? Look at the challenges we have in maternal health care already. So if indeed the budget is an issue, are we sitting here and they've told us so much money is coming from Gold Board? They are well, as we speak, they've introduced a one CD per litre, 4.5 CDs per gallon.
Implementation date has been moved to 16th
of this month. So that should find some expression into the demands that these nurses. They have to find the money and make sure they meet the demands of these nurses.
Very well. Elvis, already we have a deficit in the nurse to patient ratio. Nurses have now laid down their tools. Lives are at stake. Now there's a matter of pushing vis-a-vis demands being made. Do we have the money to meet these demands? If we do not, how do we engage going forward to avoid what is likely to be a health catastrophe in this country?
See, as a country, I always say this, it's about setting our priorities right, telling Ghanaians the truth about the country's state of development and the sacrifices that would need to be made is what is key. But when we go on political platform and make sumptuous promises to Ghanaians, when you come to power, you don't expect the same Ghanaians to treat you with kids' gloves. They didn't force you to go and make all those promises. So sometimes politicians turn around to blame Ghanaians for demanding their pound of flesh for the promises politicians make, and then they turn around. It's something that is funny. First of all, the government should stop making this accusation that it's not in the budget. Why is it not in the budget? Why? Because the ministers were appointed, approved before the budget for the year was presented. Atuforsen presented the budget to Parliament on the 11th of March, 2025. So if you present the budget in 11th of March, and the nurses have already informed you, started engaging you from January, it means you are aware of their needs. So if they are not in the budget, it means that you deliberately didn't put them in the budget. So you cannot tell me that they are not in the budget. It's no excuse. They have brought it to you that this agreement has been signed.
Yeah.
You are a new government, we understand. That's why we are alerting you that before you present your budget, make sure we are captured. And then you deliberately remove them from the budget. You didn't include them at all. And then you come and give them excuse that because you didn't factor them in the budget, they should accept that they should not be paid. That is neither here nor there. Do you understand it? So I think the government communication should stop this communication of you are not in the budget. It will annoy the nurses the more, because then they drew attention to the thing before you presented your budget.
Right.
So if you are telling them they are not in the budget, you are only telling them that you deliberately didn't add them to the budget. You are not saying that you were not aware of their needs before presenting the budget. And they are proving that they made you aware of their needs before you presented the budget. So what's the basis for removing them from the budget, not including them in the budget? So that kind of communication will get the nurses more angry not to come back. It is not a time for that kind of confrontational communication, seeking sympathy of the public. And the public who is trying to sympathize with the politician, let me tell you, the politician has the money to go and pay in private hospitals. They have the money to fly abroad. You, the ordinary person who is supposed to sympathize with the nurses, if you sympathize with the politician, it is you who will suffer. It's you who doesn't have the money to go to UGMC to go and pay for a card for 200 cedis. UGMC is working, but how many people can afford the race at UGMC? So the typical Ghanaian mentality of trying to back government against institutions will cause us in this nurses strike if we continue that way. We should rather back the nurses against government and make government fulfill their needs. This government that has come, haven't we seen politicians driving brand new V8 and new cars? Is it not public money that are being used to buy those things? If they can afford money to buy all those things for politicians, why is that the next does not deserve what it's asking for? Why are we creating the players if they don't deserve what they mean? Look, I'm happy that we are all feeling the pinch and the pain of the nurses not being around. If you go to hospital and want to be truthful to yourself, you will sympathize with the work nurses do. A sick person is on the bed, and these nurses who are supposed to turn the person around, bathe the person, feed the person, do everything possible for the person who is on the sick bed. You, the family, you are sitting home. Okay? That your patient is at the hospital. You expect the nurses to make sure that the person is in good health. They clean the pools of people who are sick in the hospital. How many of us will be willing to do that? If you go to our hinterlands, nurses walk through forests and bushes just to go and provide health care for people in very deep forest rural communities. Some of them getting bitten by snakes, some even die out of that. Some have to sit in boats without life jackets to cross rivers to communities, island communities, to go and provide health care for people. Sometimes the canoes capsize and they die. The kind of things nurses go through is not what politicians go through.
Right.
So we should stop this attitude of trying to back the politician against the nurses. It's very important that Ghanaians averse their mind to the conditions that nurses go through just to provide health care for all of us. The wounds that of your family member, if you ask you to dress in the house, you run away.
Yeah.
It's taken to a nurse to dress that wound. And because it is his or her job, it's supposed to dress that wound and will do it for the person. The kind of work nurses do, if we want to be truthful to ourselves, they should be among the highest paid people in this country. Whatever they're asking for here, I said it here last week, there are state institutions who are earning more than that, which the nurses are earning. And whatever they are asking for, nobody has been able to prove that what you are asking for here, there's no state institution that is paying that and therefore you don't deserve it. The argument is not that they are asking for things that their counterparts in Nigeria are not enjoying. Nobody has been able to make that. Everybody agrees that whatever they are asking for,
they deserve it.
Their counterparts in other institutions paid by the same employer, which is government of Ghana, are getting similar things. So why is it that they cannot get it? I have given advice to the government here that whether 2 billion or whether 4 billion, because I have seen two different figures. Once the deputy finance minister said 2 billion, I have seen some government communicators who pushed the actual agreement and all the allowances that these nurses are to be paid, and the total is put at about 4 billion. Whichever way it is, we must make sure that these nurses get it. Because this whole nation's health care, all of us, when we are sick today, without these nurses, we are all seeing the effect. And therefore, it is important that the public stop lambasting and bashing these nurses, because that is what will even make them more angry not to come back. When in your village, they need health care, the nurse that you are lambasting is the one who goes there. It's not a politician who goes to provide the health care for them. And as I said, if you look at the conditions some of these nurses go through, if a nurse is moving from one village to another, in a bush and beaten by skin and die, doesn't get any compensation for dying in line of duty. Okay? If it's in a canoe crossing to an allied community and the boat capsizes and she dies, it's not paid any compensation for dying in line of duty. But we are in this country where the IGP decided that the IGP Dampare said, please die in duty, on line of duty, are getting over 100,000 Ghana cedis if you die in line of duty. Is the police not paid by the state? Is the nurse not being paid by the state? Why is that the police in line of duty dies will get that and the nurse cannot get that? Let's be fair to ourselves. Everybody works for government, works for the same institution, one employer, government of Ghana. So what is good for one institution is good for another institution. So I want the public to understand that if we follow politicians, we are the ones who will suffer. As I said, if you go to UGMC, a politician can afford to take his or a family to UGMC because you are paying him a bigger salary than the nurse. You have bought him a V8. You have done all kinds of things for them. You pay their accommodation. Even gardeners and the rest get paid by the state for politicians. And then we are talking about a nurse who is making sure that when we fall sick and go to the hospital, no matter our condition, situations that we will run away from when our families are in, we will run away from them. We will say, I cannot do this. Some of them, when our families are saying they poo-poo on themselves, they say, how can I go and clean an adult poo? But a nurse will clean it because it's part of his or her duty. So we should stop this idea of trying to antagonize the nurses for demanding their fair share of the national cake. I think that per Atuforsin's presentation of the budget, total compensation for 2025 is 76.6 billion. Our total expenditure for the year is 290 billion. That's what we have planned to spend. Okay? Our deficit is 43.8 billion. I think we can add the 4 billion, even if it's all, we can add it to it, if we think that the health care of this country is important. The productivity and everything we are looking for, you need healthy human beings to be able to achieve productivity. So if we don't pay attention to issues about health, we'll be in trouble. I know the government is scared because the government is very much aware that there are other institutions who are equal have other acts for these things that have not been given to them. And that when the nurses get it, there will be a whole queue of other institutions who will come in and also ask for. But
can we begin engaging them now?
That's
paint the real picture to them so an
I said it
understanding
here
is
that if the government tell the nurses that, look, this year we will not find the money to pay, but we will start the implementation. We will pay the backlog in January 2026, and therefore we have agreed to pay. The nurses will go back to work. But if the impression is that we can't pay, and then we can only consider you from January 2026, this particular strike will last longer. And for the minister to hold a press conference and tell us that he's appealing to retired nurses to come to work, I think that they have to, I've said it, see, when government play with communication will be your downfall. Communication will be your downfall. I never expected the Minister of Health to go out there and says they are appealing to retired nurses. Do you think that the retired nurses are happy with what you pay them? Do you think that they are happy the way you treated them when they were working? Do you think that when they retired and didn't take any lump sum home, you will send them to SNIT to go and take that peanut? When people who work for the security services will go and take cap 30, you think that the retired nurses who are home are happy about the way we treated them, and therefore you appeal to them and they'll come back? We should rationalize communication and realize that there are certain statements in crisis management like this. You don't. I've said it. Government needs some special experts of team sitting behind. We don't need to know them. When crisis hits government, they should consult those people to advise them that in the case of this statement will cause you more problems. I believe that just the call by the minister, the appeal to retired nurses, will even anger the nurses more. That, okay, you think that you can do without us. Please, we are talking about 120,000 nurses. How many retired nurses and midwives are alive for you to even be appealing to them that you come and replace those who are working? We should be realistic in situations like this. Let's talk to the people in a way and manner that they will feel like, okay, the government is willing, so let's listen. But when you make statements that they see as disparaging, statement that they see that you are trying to say they are not important, you get them more angry, and then they will decide not to come until you do the right thing. And I think it will cost not the government, because as the politicians have money to pay in private hospitals. It is the poor person who cannot afford private health care, who needs to carry his national health insurance card and go to a public health facility, is the one who will suffer. And in rural Ghana, ask yourself, how many rural communities have even private healthcare facilities there? That even if the person wants to go to private, he has to travel a long distance in order to be able to go to a private health facility.
Thank you. Thank you, Elvis. Honorable, let me come to you in a minute. You need to address this and address it now.
Okay, so before I come to the way forward, quickly, let me just do some few corrections. It's absolutely important. Look, Elvis made a point that the health minister said he was bringing on board retired nurses, as it were, to come and replace these nurses and midwives. No. That is way out of the narrative.
So what's
the minister's position is that whilst negotiations are ongoing, lives must be protected. And so doctors are equally overwhelmed. What do we do while still negotiating? So let's appeal to these retired nurses as a stopgap measure to come and assist. I mean, someone who has worked and served this nation for 60 plus years and is retired cannot be a substitute.
On what condition?
It cannot be a substitute for someone who is in active service. I think that point must be made.
I know he said,
look,
Honorable, you say you are trying to justify the point is that
no, I'm coming.
I am working. And I say I'm on strike.
Please,
and then you are appealing to someone to come and work on my behalf.
Please. Elvis,
it's not like
with the greatest respect. The point I'm making is that whilst negotiating, or while the nurses and midwives are home, we must protect and preserve life.
Very well.
How do we do it? Doctors alone cannot do it.
I'm looking at a story here.
That's
why former GRNMA president says retired nurses are sicker than the patients.
Yes, so those that are healthy can come and assist And it's a voluntary call, call to service, call to humanity. This is not a substitute for what is government needs to do to bring this message back. But you see, the way forward for me, I think it's absolutely important for us to know at this point that government hasn't thrown its hand in despair. The Deputy Finance Minister only stated the amount that we need in order to absorb this whole condition of service. Okay? Government is a process where you need to give and take. I believe strongly that with negotiation, we'll be able to go around this whole difficulty. But I think that going forward, there is also the need for us to prioritize investment into security hospitals, investment into religious-based hospitals, because we are getting to know that St. Anne and many other church institutions. Yes.
It's overwhelmed now.
Yes. That's what I'm saying, that they are working based on moral principle. Okay? And again, if you go to 37, you go to police hospital, these are also institutions that are working. My point is that there will always be labor agitation. I am married to a nurse. And I know the difficulty they go through. Elvis is very much aware.
I don't need them then.
I'm not against. So the point must be made very clear that this government is not against. Official government position is not to say that these nurses are not entitled to this.
The posturing of the minister suggests
which
otherwise.
Minister?
You see, the health
minister.
Which minister? You say it's a voluntary call to the retired nurses.
No.
But you know that he's met with allied unions who are not on strike yesterday.
Let's get the narrative well. You are a minister at the top, the very pinnacle of policy decision making. And groups will seek audience with you all the time, particularly so in this very critical moment when health workers want to call on you. And indeed, in the process, they say, oh, they are willing to offer their services. I mean, all I'm saying is that I can move out of studios, God forbid, and be involved in accident. Anybody at all, anything can happen. That is why we are saying that they are essential service providers. Okay? So government is not against, government is not fighting these people. All we are saying is that what brought us down, the economy down, as we witnessed at the tail end of Nanado's administration, was the lack of fiscal discipline. And so when we begin to go haywire now, you get everything you are entitled to from government, but when you go to the market and inflation is 54, that is where you feel the pinch. That is where you see the irrelevance of the
real value of what you're asking
for will not be felt. You see, so I am appealing on moral ground and say, look, it's a give and take process. Let's still continue to judge all. Government cannot maintain a firm stand. Okay, we must gravitate to the center. The nurses must also gravitate to the center, so that, just like Elvis said, then we find a common ground to move forward. But you see, before I land, I think that my dear sister Kostia made mention of certain things which are factually inaccurate. If you're part of a government that the president appointed 120 plus ministers, and the current regime has appointed just 56, who is saving the public coffers? Who is protecting the public purse? You were part of a government that the president appointed close to 1,000 presidential staffers. Okay? Mahama is yet to do even up to 200. Okay? And so my dear sister's point is that luxurious travel. I mean, there's been literally some form of ban on travel, unless, of course, it's extremely essential. Otherwise,
is that a hill you are willing to die on? That some of your appointees are not flying first class or business class. Is that a hill you are willing to die on?
Let's not get into that.
Absolutely,
let's not get there.
Absolutely.
Let's not get there. You wrap up on your point for me.
Yes,
is that a hill you are willing to die on?
My point is that government has been preoccupied with certain things. You know, until we came, a very laudable policy like the free senior high school program, there was no sustainable funding for it. Okay,
for free senior high school,
there was no sustainable funding for it.
Yet we maintained it since implementation.
It's just been about back here and there. Okay,
yet we sustained it, and you are in government.
You see, the sustenance of a program depends largely on the source of funding inflow. Okay, how continuous is it? How dependable, how reliable it is?
The sustenance of maintaining trust in the government is ensuring these nurses go back
I would like to be
hospital.
Please,
let me allow him land, and then I come to you. Allow him land.
Let's have a very
because you came back to my
right.
Yes,
let's have him land.
Just to set
we have a few seconds to go.
Just to set the record straight. So you see, today, out of ingenuity, out of creativity, government has been able to find a sustainable source of funding for free senior high, which is under the guest fund. And today, you hear that all the cacophony, all the noises from schools, right, from feeding to congestion, whatever it is, at least is under control. All we are saying is that let us tackle these fundamentals. Then, of course, government is not saying that we are not indebted to you. When government owes you, I mean, government will definitely pay.
But when?
So
and what will be the value of that money?
Fortunately for us, now the cedi is even stronger than the dollar. So the more the more government owes, yes. If you look at the coordination between the fiscal and the monetary,
let's not go into
the more government owes them, right? I think that we must make the point that time value of money is something we have all learned basically. Okay, and today you need money to do something, urgently. Right. So from that perspective, we can begin. We can begin from somewhere, whilst we defer the rest to the next budget.
Thank you.
I believe strongly that government is willing, to engage further.
Thank you.
Nana, please, the cedi cannot be stronger than $1. You need 10 cedi to buy $1.
Thank you.
The cedi has been some strength, but
no, we need to make that clarification.
That's what I'm just trying to say.
Just to make the point that it has garnered some strength. It has garnered some strength.
No,
I mean, we all know.
Exactly.
We all know the relationship.
But perhaps that's the prayer.
Of course.
Akusia, let's just strike solutions at this point.
He said again. He said that he had to correct an inaccuracy, and he ended up stating something completely false about free SHS not having funding. We know free SHS was coming from the annual budget funding allocation. We know this. We know this, which was coming from our proceeds. We found it important for our teeming youth to get free senior high school.
Very well.
Education. Now, what we are saying as we sit here is, in the event that Honorable here, on his way to his constituency, has a medical emergency, he just might end up in one of the 19 public institutions or 2 private hospitals, and there will be no nurses to help him. If these 2 private hospitals are not near to him and ends up in a public facility, he's going to be in trouble. We're also saying that these negotiations, see the delay, they are due for another negotiation next year. Okay, and when they are, if they don't implement this, next year they are going to sit down for another negotiation. They sit down for another negotiation. It's not going to find expression in the budget. They're going to push it all the way to 2027. What we are going to see is a political gimmick of 2028, trying to appease them for all the ill treatments that they have meted out to them during this period.
Because it's an election year.
Yes. They are going to drag it. Yes, that's what they are going to do.
Did you do the same?
Again, I said, when I told you, you can find it for, sometimes it's not, don't take it that Kozi is saying it. Take it that in 2017, when we came to power, some of the agreements that they had left in 2016, we implemented in 2017.
Very well.
Government is a continuum. Well. So these nurses have to go back. But for them to go back, they have to, again, there are so many apologies that this government has to give to Ghanaians. One, D-Levy, they haven't apologized. Now, what these nurses are going through, the Ghanaian is suffering. Public health care, we all know the challenges there already. And then for you to play these power gimmicks with these nurses, I said something, and I don't want it to be true, but it feels that way, that let's not make it comfortable for anybody to feel they can go to strike. And let's delay the process or let them suffer at best and turn public sentiment against them. That was what they were hoping to happen. And as Elvis said, the Minister of Health dropped the ball in the comments he passed. Again, when a minister comes to talk, we are believing that he's speaking the heart and mind of the president. Right. It cannot be that there's a code of conduct for all appointees and they just set off to do whatever they want and say whatever they want. So here, I feel that he's pained because his wife is a nurse and she's on strike. I don't think she's happy to be on strike. But they have to go back to the hospitals. You have to go back to take care of Ghanaians.
Well.
To do that, it's the burden of responsibility is more on the government than the nurses. Meet the agreement. You have introduced at dead of night D-levy, which is going to rake in millions as far as taxes are concerned. Find expression for it somewhere in the budget. You add it. The life of Ghanaian citizens cannot be taken.
We put that bill at the normal parliamentary hours.
We didn't. You introduced it. Even
there was a one-page addendum brought in. But let's not go in there.
Elvis knows. Parliament now says from 2.
No, me, I'm clapping for you. I'm clapping for you because what you did in the history of this country. I said I'm clapping for you. You have been able to. Let me say. And I said this, and I said this on my social media. But I'll state it here. The speed with which you implemented the D-levy, the same speed with which you have to ensure these nurses you meet their demands and help them get back into the hospital. Same speed. Same speed.
Politicians will always be politicians. And when they go about campaigning, the things they say, when they go back to their rooms, reality dawns on them. Reality has caught up with us now. We need to face the bull by the horn, grab the bull by the horns. What do we do in this position? Because lives are at stake.
That is, the lives are at stake. So anybody tell that fiscal measures, is the fiscal measure more important than people dying? Somebody say to destabilize the economy. What are you talking about? How much money can buy somebody's life? And it's not something that others working for government are not enjoying. It's not like the nurses are asking for something that no government official worker is enjoying.
They are not asking for less.
They are just asking for what their counterparts elsewhere are enjoying. So you say they should sacrifice for fiscal stability once their counterparts elsewhere should be enjoying the same thing. How does this, if you were a nurse and someone made this argument to you, how will you respond? That your counterparts who work for other government institutions elsewhere are enjoying what you don't. And when you ask to enjoy the state, so you should sacrifice because we need fiscal stability. Then go and cancel the one for all the counterparts. Then we know that we are on the same level. But if others are enjoying, I'm asking that I also deserve it. You are telling me that I should wait because of fiscal stability. It's not a sensible argument to make, excuse me to say. So those who are trying to make economic destabilization as a reason for not paying the nurses, I don't think that it makes sense. Because if you were in the shoes of the nurses and somebody tells you that whilst your counterparts are enjoying the things you are asking for, ask for you, sacrifice, don't enjoy it so that the economy will be stable. How will you take it as a person? So sometimes when we are making some of these statements, we should put ourselves in the shoes of the people who are asking for these things. And ask ourselves that if I were a nurse, and I know that the police get rent allowance, the soldiers get rent allowance, other public institution officials get rent allowance. I don't get rent allowance. I'm asking for rent allowance. And then somebody comes to tell me that because we want the economy to be stable, I should sacrifice, I should forget about getting rent allowance so that the economy will be stable. When we are all working for the same employer, how will you feel if somebody tells you that? That's why I said that the government communication, see, they are trying to appeal to people's emotions. It's typical of politicians. That is what they do. When they are under pressure, they want to play the victim. They want to appeal to people's emotions so that the public will rather back them against institutions. That is typical of every government. But I'm saying that it is not a sustainable thing. Because you see, let's say the nurses signed this thing under NPP and it was not implemented, for which they got angry and they voted against the government, expecting that a new government coming is the solution. And then you are now telling them because of fiscal stability, they should keep it on hold. You expect that nurse to vote for you in the next elections. So sometimes when we are talking about some of these things, let's not just say it because we want to appeal to people's emotions to back government against those who are asking for it. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of those who are asking and ask yourself, if I'm the one in the shoes of the person, and somebody make this argument to me that others should enjoy, I should sacrifice, so that the state will be stabilized, the economy will be stable. How will I take it? You see, this is the way I want us to look at some of this argument. I made it a point here last week that I see, until we go back to this thing that we have done in the past and correct it, we will have these problems anytime.
Very well.
The whole public sector worker went on capitated pension scheme. A government said, paying those lump sums for people retire is too much. So let's put everybody on SNIT. And then the politicians said, we will not be on SNIT, we will be on something called Article 71.
Yeah.
As for the security we fear, they have been overthrowing the politicians who will keep them on cap 30. And then you now bring a complete confusion. And then the person who retires on sleep goes home. A teacher teaches, the next works for 30 years, go and take home like 40,000, 50,000. And a soldier or policeman going home on retirement takes like 200,000 or 300,000 under cap 30. And you tell them, they all work for the same government. And you say that, oh, you are on SNIT, so it's okay, that's what you deserve. Those on cap 30, that's what they deserve. And you expect those on SNIT not to ask for more. Until we go back and correct this. And I think I read somewhere that the President Mahama has admitted that it's about time we revisit the issue of the entire salary structure and pensions.
Right.
Until we do that, there's no way, because how, as I said, a policeman, if he's not in a barracks, get money for rent. A soldier, if he's not in a barracks, get money for rent. And the nurse does not get anything for rent. You understand it?
I'm saying that their job, they get little.
Hold on for me.
No,
officially.
Officially, if a policeman goes in the barracks, it's not about side issues. Official condition of service for the security service, police and military, I know.
Once you're
if you're not in the barracks, you get official money for rent. It's part of their condition.
Granted.
And the next doesn't get it. And they're asking for it. You say because we want the economy to be stable.
They should sacrifice.
They should sacrifice.
Let me take a break here. When I come back, we'll continue the conversation. This is Breakfast Daily. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Grateful that you stayed on with us. This is Breakfast Daily here on ChannelOne TV. I'll take a few quick messages and then we can make some progress on the show. This one says, good morning, Nana. Regarding the nurses' strikes and the non-budget for it by government, can I ask a question? Okay, and the question is, was the sea defense war ravaging parts of the Volta included in the 2025 budget? Yet a contract was just awarded for the sea defense war. Was it in the budget? Wouldn't that also take the government off its budget? This is from Sam. This one says, good morning. I am a nurse who works at Doma East District Hospital, Wemfie. One of our nurses was sick and referred to CATH. We, the staff, had to contribute and pay for the cost of ambulance, 1,500 to the National Ambulance Service before she was sent to CATH. Why should this happen? I want to ask, if this happens to be a pandemic outbreak, would the government tell us that there is no space in its budget to look for extra money to control the pandemic? To me, I see a strike as a pandemic and it's taking lives. So what is the government doing about it? This is Asamoah from Adenta. This one says, good morning. I am D. Bella Jr. from Kaswa. I am enjoying the show and the issue of discussion. Elvis Darkmo has hit the nail right on the head. I was completely shocked when I heard the whole health minister approach the case, how he approached the case, and what is worse is the finance ministry saying their need is not in the budget. The government came into office with a strategy to blame the previous government for everything so that they find a way to cover up for their incompetence. They were given a code of conduct, but already we have seen some of them display arrogance of power. Anytime politicians are given power, they think that they are better than anyone in this country, and it ought not to be so. Government should treat this matter as an issue, or treat this issue as a matter of urgency. Good morning, Breakfast Daily. Elvis Darko is rather stoking the fires for partisan expediency. No one is saying that the nurses don't deserve what they are asking for. If they could wait for the past 8 months, why can't they bear with the new government for a while? Teachers also go through the same stress conditions, yet in 2024, the then government threatened to freeze the salaries of teachers if they didn't go back to work. I didn't hear Elvis talk with this passion. They shouldn't hide under the cloak of neutralism to advance partisan ambitions. Okay, that's Rex from Ashoman. This one says, I'm very happy for Elvis Darkon. You are talking to the minds of all nurses in Ghana, and we appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Yusuf, a concerned nurse, speaking there. Elvis looked like this morning. Both the good and the bad are for you.
Maybe the person has not followed me.
Exactly.
The teachers strike the same point I made. I have made the point that if I'm a president, everybody's salary will be pegged from how much the teacher is paid. Because every one of us is built by the teacher, every human being. Right. In fact, children, we spend more time with our teachers than our parents. Our active hours in a day, we spend it with the teachers than our parents. So I am of the view that if I'm president and I have the power, salaries will be pegged at how much a teacher is paid for everybody in this country. So maybe the person has not followed me. Look, my GSS mathematics teacher is called John Dimo. He said he taught for 39 years He was paid 32,000 cedis as retirement package by Senate.
They owe him 7,000. They were paying him 1,000.
39 years of a teacher's life.
So
He went home with 32,000 cedis. So it means that for each year of teaching, because of the low salary, he didn't even make 1,000 cedis. For the lump sum, he didn't even make 1,000 cedis. For 39 years, got 32,000. This, if you are in that situation, and there's the person is asking for more, you go and tell my teacher that because teachers are on strike, he should come to the classroom, and you think with this pain in him, he will come.
He wouldn't come. Let's move on. 24-hour economy is coming. The president says July 1.
It's coming.
He is going to activate the ports, Tema and Takrady, to begin 24-hour operations. This 24-hour economy, what exactly is it? Or not?
Okay, so a quick one before I come to that. I think Elvis made some very important points.
You have 5 minutes. You are using some of the 5 minutes for
just spare me
Honorable.
a bit.
You make a fantastic health minister. A fantastic one. If they haven't appointed a deputy health minister, he should be sent in.
No, Akando doesn't have a deputy.
Yes, please, he should help Akando.
Fantastic point. You know,
he should help Akando.
There is consensus on this table that the health workers are entitled to whatever it is that they are asking for.
Right.
Number 2, official government communication hasn't deviated from that position. That must be stated clearly and unambiguously. Now, he made a point that economic health can kill, but then the point is that if your economy is not stable, you can equally die. Look, during the DDEP where there was haircut, there were a lot of retired people who, I mean, in the process, they died. They couldn't get their stipends for their medication and all those ones. So a healthy economy is as good as a very reasonable remuneration for labor force or workforce. Okay, that point might be stated. And government from the very beginning is saying that let us all make some sacrifices. So as you notice, the president has cut down the size of government. Indeed, he says that there will be no ex gratia for his ministers at the turn of ENA. Then he cut down on what? Appointment, he cut down on foreign scholarship, a whole lot in order to ensure that there is physical space to accommodate the very essential issues that we are talking about.
Right.
These nurses definitely will take good care of them because the service they render, I mean, you cannot discount it.
Right.
Now, back to 24-hour economy. You would have noticed, or you will notice that the government is methodically walking the talk we rendered on the campaign platform. And so, from fixing the economy to a Jumaura, launching national apprenticeship program, I mean, getting sustainable funding for school feeding, a whole lot.
All of which found expression in the budget.
Absolutely.
24-hour economy did not.
Absolutely. And so, what did we say we'll do? The reality is that the previous government did one district, one factory. What was the target? The government then was seeking to increase production and productivity, enhance productivity. The government then was seeking to use the same platform to create jobs. But I think somewhere along the line, they got a lot of processes wrong. And so it couldn't yield the kind of dividend and expectation that Ghanaians, were looking for. Now, then we came on the campaign trail and said, we'll do certain things in order to drive the policy of 24-hour economy. That is making sure that we work all around the clock. Because we have realized that there are certain key sectors of this economy where the usual conventional working hour of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. will not be ideal to drive the kind of productivity we are seeking to do. And so if you go to the port, especially, Passports Office, DVLA, a couple of offices, we all acknowledge that, look, these offices can be run on 24-hour basis. And so government felt that there was the need to do certain give and take processes. You let the private sector get the needed convenient environment in order to incentivize the process of what? Producing these goods and services. And so President has sent a signal that by 1st July, this policy will be officially launched. And then we'll start with the Tema Port and Takrady Port. Now, at the heart of the 24-hour economy is to ensure that whilst we produce internally, we enhance export trade. And so we are seeking to leverage on the long value chain within the agriculture subsector. If you go to production of horticultural crops, i.e. most importantly, the fruits, pawpaw, pineapple, mangoes, then you go into the chilies and other veggies and all this. I think these are areas that we can actually stem the process of production, increase productivity, then enhance our ability to export to the foreign market on record time. And then with the policy, then it means that we are going to cut down on post-harvest losses. And then with the 24-hour operation of the port, it means that the ports are ever ready
to export.
And then when you can export on record time, then it means that the value, the true value of these, crops also will be maintained in order that you get the best output for it. So precisely, that is what we are aiming at. The launch will be done in July. We seek to create more employable opportunities so that we add by adding value to the primary commodities that we produce as well. Through the value addition, more jobs will be created, right? Through the value addition, we seek to, retain most of the things that we export. Currently, how much we put into export also tends to ask for more dollar to be generated so that, we'll be able to...
So this will be a game changer?
Absolutely a game changer, particularly in areas that we have comparative advantage. So that is about the 24-hour economy, in order that we stabilize the CD, continue to stabilize the CD as we can see.
That's what the stabilization is important, because if it continues to gain strength against the dollar, it will affect the exports, which actually is the basis for this 24-hour economy.
Yes, of course. When you eat what you produce and you produce what you use, you don't now have the appetite to go and import. It is through the process of importation that you need the FX, foreign, currency in order to import. And so the 24-hour economy is not just seeking raw production of primary produce. It is value addition. We are going to embark on an enhanced value addition so that when you add value to it, then there is no need for you to do the export market, that you think about, which of course you need more dollars and FS to do.
Very well. Because your 24-hour economy is coming, finally.
It's coming.
Yeah, July 1, according to President John Dramani Mahama.
The 24-hour economy is a textbook example of political deception. Yes. An empty promise, a big empty promise disguised as transformation.
You think so?
Yes, I believe so. Because if they believed in it, would have found it in the budget. All it is a slogan. That's what it is. When we championed one district, one factory, it found expression in the budget. When we said free SHS, it found expression in the budget. 24-hour economy, you can't preach 24-hour economy and not allocate resources to core sectors of the economy. So we are talking energy, we are talking health, transport, manufacturing.
Security.
Energy, afterthought, de-levy. It was an afterthought. Otherwise, in March, when Ato was forcing, he would have put it in a budget. Health, they dismissed any concerns as far as these negotiations are concerned. Here we are now with nurses on strike. So how do you preach a 24-hour economy when energy, health, manufacturing, you haven't laid out any plan for it, but you expect that magically everything will fall into place? It's you see, people will slowly awaken to the facts that they've been lied to and they've been taken for granted. As I said here, I say it's always difficult even highlighting the ills of this government because we just came off from an election with a very humiliating defeat as far as our expectations were concerned. So anything we say, it's like, oh, you just gave you opportunity, whatever. But when we are highlighting the problems, we are not taken seriously. I think that and this is something they do, and I've heard people catching on slowly. They'll mention something, create a secretariat, say there's legislation backing it, delay the process, nothing happens, they move on to another thing. Ejumera, it's been 6 months. What's happening with Ejumera? What is happening? Women's World Bank, it's been launched, but what is happening? Where is where? Those who know, know.
Yes, of course.
And those who
But I think everybody must know.
Exactly.
Yes,
So it's a national policy.
Also, we are refusing not to know.
So 24-hour economy is not a strategy, it's a slogan. If we were to say a 24-hour economy, the 1D, 1F, which we implemented, is a clear indication of 24-hour economy.
And so
because
if this policy by John Mahama comes to fruition, then of course the 1D, 1F, and then of course the factories in there will run on a 24-hour basis. And so this is more jobs for the youth. This is growing the local economy.
As we speak, there are health facilities that run 3 shifts. They are not introducing anything. I'm saying that if indeed it is not a slogan, we would have seen allocations into at least 4 major areas: energy, health, manufacturing, as well as transport. We haven't seen anything to show that, oh, indeed, they are planning, there's a definite plan. There's a script, a political script of deception.
That's why they're asking you to
No
pay 1
access,
cedi more to keep the lights on.
They are asking us to pay 1 cedi, but that was they said they are using it to pay fuel. That's what they said.
No,
And then also saying that
to keep the lights on.
to keep
And to
the
service the
lights.
debts.
Somebody kept the lights on for 8 years. Somebody kept the lights on for 8 years.
No,
Somebody
just
treated nurses with respect. Someone preempted the needs of certain institutions and factored it, as Elvis was saying off air, factored it into the budget sometimes 2 years in advance. So we didn't see this all over civil unrest that's already rearing its head 6 months into someone's season 2. So this is no policy, it's a slogan. Miss Honorable Frank Ifriye knows this. He knows there's nothing called 24-hour economy. It's deception, NDC. The D, as far as this 24-hour economy is concerned, is deception. There's no plan.
Right. Very well.
Of course, if there was a plan, we would have seen expression in some of these key sectors. If you prioritize the 24-hour economy, you don't even let nurses go on strike.
Right. Oh no, Elvis, July 1, what's the expectation for this 24-hour economy?
Expectation in terms of what?
What are you expecting to see from July 1?
You see, a 24-hour economy is a function of demand and supply for products and services.
Right.
When demand is there, the people who are doing production will do more hours to meet the demand.
Exactly.
So a 24-hour economy, I've said, is not a government policy. Okay? Government can create the environment. But what is going to drive a 24-hour economy is about the private sector, which does the production. And if there's demand for their products, they will do even 78 hours. They don't mind. It's about demand and supply. Hospitals run 24 hours, right? Transport companies. The last time I went to Kumasi, I took VIP. I left here almost 11, and I got to Kumasi in the morning about 6 a.m. So transport companies, because why? The demand is there.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
My late father worked at GTP in Tema. They were running 24-hour economy, 8 hours shift. Because that time, if a woman doesn't have GTP in Ghana, you don't have an expensive cloth.
Yeah.
Okay? Today, GTP can't even, I'm not sure they can even run 8 hours. Because demand for their product is completely gone because we have allowed cheap substitutes from imports to kill their business. We have not paid attention to the cotton industry. That to provide a cotton for Japan tester to provide a grade baft, the raw materials that the testers companies need to be able to do the cloth for us. So the cotton industry has collapsed. That's why Japan tester is struggling to survive. And if Japan tester is struggling to survive, who produces the grade baft, the main raw material for GTP, Akosombo testers, and the rest. So 24-hour economy is, when we tout it as a government policy, if we are not careful, what we are going to say is to go and pack and increase the payroll of government. And at the end of the day, it will come and hurt all of us. As Honorable has said, we all want a stable economy. One of the things that makes it difficult for a stable economy is the compensation budget for Ghana. This year we are spending 290 billion per the budget. Out of that, 76.6 billion alone is going into compensations. The port, ships come and land at the port. They come and dock at the port at night. So there's a portion of the port that already works 24 hours. The security guards at the port, they work 24 hours. Yeah. Probably someone say, maybe customs officials are not there in the night to process. Maybe that aspect is what we want to make 24 hours. We should be clear as to which aspect of the port. But if you say it's going to be launched at the port, it sounds as if the entire port, no aspect of the port is 24 hours and we are now introducing it. It's not true. Right. There are aspects of the port that are already working 24 hours. There are aspects of it that are not operating 24 hours. You are going to add 24 hours to the aspects that are not operating 24 hours. Let's say it. Let's be clear. Yeah. So that we don't go and create a situation where we say, this government is doing 24 hours, this is doing 24 hours, and we pack it with people that because 24 hours, they need more staff. And then at the end of the day, the productivity in those situations will be so low because when people go to work, even in the night, we have overstaffed the place that people go sit down virtually do nothing and they get paid. We should avoid that situation. Because already we all know that the public institutions, a lot of them, the number of staff they have, if you want to measure productivity, a lot of them, their productivity will not match what the private sector is doing. And that's why there's so much inefficiency in the public sector. So this 24-hour thing that we want to make it look like the government policy and the rest, if we are not careful, it will end up costing us something that should not cost us, depending upon the way we do it. So there has to be a proper study as to which aspect of the port that is not running 24 hours. If we are introducing 24 hours into that aspect of the port, looking at the human resource of customs, are they going to be able to run it effectively with the kind of staff they have now if we manage it, or we just have to add a very small number of staff so that we don't use 24 hours as an excuse to say, oh, because we are doing 24, we are doubling the staff of customs at the port. And there becomes another inefficiency that will cost us on the payroll. Look, 24 hours economy. The gateway to 24-hour economy is 1D1F. 1D1F is the gateway to 24-hour economy. Because the private sector is the one that is drive 24-hour economy. If demand for production in this country is what will make 24-hour economy possible, it means that the private businesses need to be given the kind of incentives that will make sure that they function and function well, produce things at competitive prices. We create demand for their produce. So that if somebody is doing 8 hours, but now there's so much demand, it's the private company that's going to look at its overheads and look at its returns and say, okay, if we have this demand, looking at my overhead and my returns, if I increase the number of hours, I can still put it in my expenses and manage it. And it's the private sector that does production. Government doesn't do production. Government is policy. Government doesn't do production. It's private sector that does production. And we all agree and know that, as I said here the last time, the exports we are talking about right now, productivity in this is very minimal. Gold, oil, cocoa are about 80% of all the exports we boast about. There's high unemployment because there are no companies to employ the people. So your 24-hour economy want to introduce and make it a government policy. If there are no private companies that are thriving, where does the employment come from in the 24-hour economy? So that if we ought to fix 24-hour economy to work, what government has to do is to come out a policy sector by sector. If the textile industry has collapsed, what are the issues? Growing of cotton has collapsed. How do we revive cotton growth? If we are able to revive growth of cotton, how then does that fit into Japan textile now providing the grey bag before the textile industry can revive, all at competitive prices? That is what we need to do. If we are talking about a product, which companies are into that? For instance, government set up 300 million to do buy parts. The question is, if we have identified 3 or 4 companies in this country who are into that, locally, that produces parts, and we say, okay, maybe your capacity to produce now is this because there's no demand. Government now want to incentivize your demand by giving you the contract now to provide all the parts that government want to buy. And therefore, if your production is this, now you can do 24 hours because now government has given you a huge contract. That one, the money is already there. Those we are going to give it to are there. So we have government has now used public policy to give you demand. Then the company will say, oh, I used to do 8 hours, but now with the contract government has given me, with 8 hours, I cannot meet the demand. So now I have to increase demand. That's why I said that 24-hour economy, the gateway to that policy is 1D, 1F. How to get private sector businesses thriving.
Honorable, final take on 24-hour economy. It looks as though from all the commentary we are hearing from the government side, we are tying it to export. Are we there? Or would we have that strength to export that much to drive the demand? I mean, already are we producing enough for local consumption and to export same?
Okay, so we are just seeking to emphasize where we have maximum
in a minute
comparative advantage. So you see, what Ivy said just is in tandem with what government is trying to do. If you look at it critically, we are trying to tie agriculture to export. Where do you export? You export through the harbors, mainly Tema and Takrali. Okay. Yeah. Oftentimes, you look at it, you produce some of these perishable commodities like yam, the veggies, and the rest, and you do the production not in the city center. You do this at the district level, the hinterland. So, if you look at the length of time these commodities are transported on the regular road like this, sometimes yams. Trucks are ferrying yam from OT region, northern region, and the rest, and they are broken down. Instead of a day or two, they end up spending about 2 weeks on the road. This is about post-harvest losses. The president says that, for instance, the Volta Lake Transport Company will be brought on board so that we take advantage of the Volta Lake itself, so that you ferry these goods from the top early enough to that point to the harbors, so that you cut down on post-harvest losses. Then you enhance the quality of the export market. Okay, we've realized that we have a comparative advantage in agriculture, and you put your money where your mouth lies. And so the only thing we need to do, which is a low-hanging fruit, is to ensure that we support our farmers to produce more for the local consumption or the local market, and then to export as well.
Because you briefly wrap up on 24-hour economy for me.
I said it is political deception. It is a slogan. It didn't find expression in the budget because it was a slogan. It is as simple as a Yezu. Yes, equate the 24-hour economy to that.
Right. Are you aware the free senior high and the one district, one factory, they were not in the budget?
Please, they found
they were not in the budget.
They were.
They were in the budget.
They were in the budget.
They were.
You insist the
which part of the budget? No. Prove me wrong.
Thank you so much.
The point is that I see
30 seconds.
As I said,
30 seconds.
It talks about yam. The yam is produced by individuals, not government.
Right.
Okay. It's individual production.
But government can drive the demand.
Government policy is to make sure the multimodal transport system, the water transport comes in and make sure that transportation is done.
Hold on. A 24-hour economy. No.
Honorable,
you had your chance. You are all jumping into time.
We've run out of time. Oh, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Honorable, thank you.
Hey, producer, I need to have my say.
The government
Elvis, wait.
Thank you.
I'm saying that if they believed in the policy, they wouldn't have sacked the thousands of people they did in the institution.
Thank you so much, Honorable. Thank you, Akosia. Thank you, Elvis. Our time is up. This has been the News Review segment here on Breakfast Daily. Thank you so much for your time. But stay with us here on Channel One TV. Breakfast Daily continues after this.